a bustling Columbia, South Carolina. The smell in the air is that of fried food and freshly cut grass. Thousands of people will take in the South Carolina State Fair today, and thousands more will file into Williams-Brice Stadium to watch a battle between two SEC foes, one being the number 14 team in the land, the Oklahoma Sooners, the other being your South Carolina Gamecocks, coming up today. Kick at 12:45. It is Gamecocks Game Day. I'm Tyler Head. He is Elijah Campbell, and we're getting you set for 4 quarters of action between the Sooners and the Gamecocks. Partner, how are we doing this morning?
Oh, this is fantastic. This is one of the first, real crisp fall mornings we've had. This is football weather, quintessential football weather. And with the excitement of the game, it being, a fair game, which also, let's go ahead and get this out, right now.
Yep.
Get here early.
I mean, we rolled in before 7, and it's already starting to get not thick yet, but there's a lot of cars around. I'll say that much.
It's getting there. It is already getting there. We are already to a hot start when it comes to traffic. So make sure you get here early. But when you get here early, you can enjoy this crisp fall weather. It feels like football out here. Tyler Head, I am so amped for a nice little matinee between South Carolina and one of the historic programs of this great sport.
It's really funny because we've done nothing but night games so far this year, both home and away. And it's really funny for the first couple of years, people say, we don't get enough night games. And now everybody's like, please give us a day game, give us an early kick for the love of God.
Right.
We're finally getting it today against Oklahoma. You'll get a mid-afternoon kick next week against Alabama. So some nice games where we can enjoy the middle of the day coming up over these next couple weeks. Currently right now about 52 degrees here in downtown Columbia, looking to be about 75 at kickoff. Tons of sunshine, no rain in the forecast. Going to be a perfect, as they call it, Chamber of Commerce type of day.
Yes, it is. Oh, it is a Chamber of Commerce type day, especially once you get into this season right here. Nice and crisp in the morning. I saw my breath when I was walking outside today. When I was breathing, I was like, that's how I know we're back. That is how I know we're back. But it'll still be a nice, a nice warm 70-plus sunny day. And, I do love the aesthetic of Williams-Brice at around the midday point.
Oh, yeah.
Hard to beat, man. Hard to beat.
Going to be a fun day. Obviously, a big game for both sides. And really, it's interesting. I looked this up earlier on this week. Shane Beamer, really good in the last 6 games of the regular season, 16-8 overall record in his first 4 seasons here at South Carolina. Brent Venables on the other side, not quite as much, 9-9 in the final 6 games of the regular season. So kind of a pivot point for both programs entering these games. They both go into the back half of their schedule. Both teams have pretty much nothing but ranked opponents to come after this. So obviously both sides need to get a win today. And it's really interesting. We talked to some people from the Oklahoma side this week. For them to be number 14, sitting at 5-1, they're kind of down on their program right now. They're not feeling great about where they're at, stemming a lot from their offensive performance last week against Texas.
Yeah, think about Oklahoma the way we thought about LSU, right? Elite defense, offense that has left a lot to be desired, with a quarterback who has given you a lot of high risk, high reward type action. Now, the difference being Oklahoma is just better than LSU defensively, even though they're both top 10 units. Oklahoma, you could argue, is the number 1 defense in the country based on whatever metric it is.
There's
Turnovers, points against, yards, red zone, yards per play. I mean, stop rate, which is one of my favorites. Really, they're second behind Texas Tech in stop rate. And this defense does everything, and offensively, that's what I think Oklahoma fans feel like is the difference between having a 1 in that loss column and a 0 in that loss column, because waiting for John Mateer to come back from that surgery on his throwing hand with that thumb, where he's going to put 3 screws in there surgically, that obviously affected him a little bit. I think maybe more than he would admit.
Sure.
But 3 screws in your thumb also doesn't make you make bad decisions. And I think there's a little bit of a frustration with, while at times he can look like he is pulling a rabbit out of his hat, he's not afraid to throw the ball into double or triple coverage. We like to call it YOLO ball on the early game. There's a lot of YOLO baller in John Mateer, and that is a obvious source of frustration for fans of the Oklahoma Sooners.
There was a couple times last week he airmailed it, and I had no clue who he was throwing to. I'm like, I don't even see an Oklahoma guy in the camera frame at this point in time. I don't know where that ball was going.
Yeah, he's due for that. That is one thing. I mean, we talked about Garrett Nussmeier giving you some gifts, and it's if you could take advantage of the gifts Garrett Nussmeier gives you, you're going to be able to give yourself a chance to win the game. And they had a chance to win the game in Baton Rouge because Garrett Nussmeier gave them gifts. It's going to be similar today because John Mateer does have kind of a wacky risk-reward element to his decision-making, where it is more risk and not as much reward this year as maybe Oklahoma fans would have hoped. But Oklahoma, as good as that defense is and as elite as it is, and a defensive unit that will win them games on its own, the fact that their offense has not been as sexy as advertised with the new offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, and John Mateer coming in from Washington State, kind of leads their fans with more to be desired, despite being a top 15 team in the country right now.
On the other side of things, South Carolina enters 3-3, 1-2 in conference play, of course, coming off the loss in Baton Rouge last week to LSU in a ugly, sloppy, just not fun game to watch, I think, for either side. But regardless, South Carolina once again at 3-3, as they were a season ago, where they went on to reel off 6 straight wins, funny enough, starting with Oklahoma and obviously ending with Clemson. And the vibes are a lot different this time around. People not as up and positive because it doesn't seem like they're trending in the right direction as they head into this final 6-game stretch. And I posed the question earlier on this week that I think we look across at Oklahoma, again, top 15 team, 5-1, all their goals still ahead of them, all the hype around Mateer and what he did in the first month of the season. They are what South Carolina was supposed to be. We were supposed to be talking about Carolina, or we thought we were supposed to be talking about Carolina in that exact same way halfway through the season. Instead, 3-3, and right now we're kind of hoping they win enough to get to a bowl game.
Right now, what this game represents today, Tyler, is a crossroads game, because your season can go in one of two directions. You can lose today, and then you will look at the other 3 games remaining on your SEC slate. That includes a home game against Alabama, who may be the hottest team in college football right now, and I think they're going to do some ungodly things to Tennessee today. At Ole Miss, a team who is top 5 in the country, and we'll see if they stay top 5 after they play Georgia today. And then a number 4 Texas A&M team, who I think is going to break their cycle of 8-4, because Texas A&M may be the most complete team in the SEC right now. And of course, you have that one on the road. Those 3 are very hard to win, and this is the most winnable of those 4 games. You lose today, you don't feel great about winning those 3 games, and I can do that math, Tyler Head. You lose these today and those next 3, you're 3-7. And no matter what you do against Coastal Carolina and Clemson, you're not making a bowl game, and the season becomes a disaster and it falls off the rails. That's option 1. Option 2 is you can win today. You win today, you give yourself a little bit of confidence going into that Alabama game. You can look at it and say, oh, Kalen DeBoer, he's got the whole losing as a big favorite on the road in conference play thing. That is a real thing that happens. And you give yourself a little bit of hope and a chance to be able to salvage a season that had a very, very bad start in terms of some of the games that you lost early.
Well, when a program is struggling, changes do eventually have to be made, and that's what happened on Sunday following the LSU game. Lonnie Teasley was let go as the offensive line coach. They now move over Sean Elliott from being the tight end / run game coordinator to being the full-time offensive line coach for the rest of the year. And look, we've all known that Lonnie Teasley's a good guy, great recruiter. I've been here for 3 years. The offensive line struggled that entire time. It eventually some kind of change had to be made because progress was not being made. And unfortunately, Lonnie Teasley did get the axe on Sunday.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate side of college football, is because by all accounts, I know people who have worked with Lonnie Teasley who do say he is a really good dude. There's a reason he's a good recruiter, is because parents trust him with their kids to turn them into men. Unfortunately, he has not developed them as football players enough to be able to maintain the position. And look, after Saturday night in Baton Rouge, it kind of had to happen. It was one of those things where you can't, in the middle of October, have a game that cost you because you have 7 procedural penalties on offense. It's one thing to have holding penalties and to make penalties out of hustle and effort. It's another thing to have those penalties because you're sloppy when it comes to whatever your operation is. And right now the operation is sloppy. You can understand a sloppy operation maybe in week 1 when you're playing against Virginia Tech at a neutral site.
Sure.
You can maybe expect it to be a little sloppy in the first home game against South Carolina State because you're still maybe working some things out with offensive install and things of that nature. It's still not ideal, but you can expect some week 1-iness in week 1 and week 2.
Right.
By the time you get to October and you're in game 6, that should not be the case. And unfortunately for South Carolina, along with bad pass protection that kept Lenore Sellers under duress all night, you did commit, again, 7 procedural penalties on offense that turned good drives into dead drives.
Yeah, so again, some change had to be made, and we'll see what Sean Elliott can do with his first game back as the offensive line coach, because he was doing this job under Steve Spurrier years and years ago. He's going to be operating without several guys that do have factored in to be starters this year. As our availability report last night told us that Nolan Hay, Casey Henry going to be out just like last week. And Casey Henry had been your starting right tackle the entire year until he got hurt. Nolan Hay had a start at center as well. And Also, Jatavius Shivers pops up as questionable last night. Don't know the details on that, but he's somebody that's an option at your right tackle spot as well. So definitely going to be without two guys. One guy that's a possibility, also kind of questionable at this point in time. We'll get another report about 90 minutes before kickoff, but we know the bodies in the offensive line room have dwindled quite a bit so far this year. So Sean Elliott not working with the full complement of guys on that roster.
Yeah, it's like, hey, congrats, Sean. You're the new offensive line coach. Bad news is you're losing a backup center in Nolan Hay. And, oh, yeah, you're not going to be you're going to be without your best pass protector in Casey Henry. Because while the unit has not played particularly well this year by almost any measurement of success you want to use, Casey Henry has been objectively your best offensive lineman this year, especially when it comes to pass protection. That right side of the offensive line has been pretty good at times this year with pass protection. When they have been good, it's because Casey Henry's been anchoring it. It is making Sean Elliott's job significantly harder. That's why I don't anticipate us to see an extreme makeover offensive line addition. Like Ty Pennington's not going to be at the 50-yard line yelling, move that bus, and then he moves the bus and you have a Joe Moore Award-winning offensive line. Not to be expected because of Casey Henry not being there, because of the short amount of time it goes from firing to being the interim offensive line coach to now having to get ready for a defensive front that is undoubtedly the best in America.
Elsewhere on the availability report, Brandon Cicielis is probable after some friendly fire took him out of last week's game. That's good to see. And then on the out, this is a little bit surprising. This came out on Thursday. Devontae Miles, who's one of your rotational guys on the defensive line, that's already not a deep room to begin with. But then Brian Rowe Jr., also going to be out for this game coming up today. And he's somebody out of that group of freshman receivers has really emerged and come into his own these past couple weeks. It's kind of your third option there at receiver. This opens up the door for a guy like Mazio Bennett to really kind of step up after he really kind of got passed by Brian Rowe in the early game so far this year. But nonetheless, we'll see if that affects the wide receiver core coming up today with a very talented freshman and Brian Rowe being out.
Yeah, that's the thing about the Brian Rowe injury is because when the availability report opened up on Wednesday night, he was not listed at all, and then he was listed as out 24 hours later. It leads you to believe something happened in practice, and that's never a good sign when they were able to rule him out that early. Hopefully what happened with Brian isn't something that can be long-term because he has turned into a pretty valuable part of this wide receiver rotation. And you're right, other guys got to step up. We need to see more Nick Harbor. We need to see Vandrevius Jacobs have the game that he had against Missouri and Kentucky. You need that Vandrevius Jacobs to show up, and you need a Mazio Bennett or a Donovan Murph who saw more action earlier in the season than he has in the last couple of weeks to be a reliable part of this wide receiver rotation.
It is Gamecocks Game Day. We're live at Jay's Corner Restaurant and Bar here at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff, getting you set for South Carolina and Oklahoma coming up today at 12:45. We'll rewind and take another look back at last week's game against LSU coming up next as Gamecocks Game Day rolls along here on the game. Gamecocks Game Day, Tyler Head, Elijah Campbell. We're live at Jay's Restaurant Corner and Bar at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff, getting you set for the Gamecocks and the Sooners coming up today. Kick at 12:45. We'll lead you right up to network coverage starting at 9:30. It's time to rewind to the last time we saw South Carolina in action. That was last week on the road in Baton Rouge against LSU, where they did fall 20-10. And you heard those couple highlights there from Todd Ellis. That was all the highlights Carolina had. Unfortunately, it was not a fun game to watch by any means. You had the great explosive run there by Matthew Fuller to score the one touchdown. They had a couple of key takeaways down there in the red zone, which were obviously huge, but unfortunately Carolina could not come away with the victory despite how sloppy LSU played as they dropped to 3-3.
That was kind of the theme of the game, Tyler Head. LSU opened the door several times and invited you to walk in. And usually for vampires, I know it's October and we're getting closer to Halloween. You know, that's how vampires get in buildings. They get invited in. You got the invitation in on multiple occasions, whether it's forcing a fumble at the goal line to keep them off the board, whether it's Garrett Nussmeier overthrowing a wide receiver by a mile and hitting DQ Smith in the chest easy enough where he could have fair caught that interception, and throwing interception in the end zone. Those three turnovers opened the door for you to be able to come into the game. LSU gave you the open invitation, and due to 13 penalties, 9 of which were procedural on both sides of the ball, and a couple of intentional grounding penalties, you never allowed yourself to take advantage of the invitation, and ultimately it resulted in a 10-point loss, despite you being in the game down only 7 points with less than 5 minutes left with the ball. There's good to be taken from that, but also it is discouraging that you had every opportunity to be able to take that game by the horns, and you just never went and took it.
Oh, it was very much like the Missouri game a couple weeks ago. It's like, man, as rough as this game has been, you're down one score in the later stages of the fourth quarter. You're right there in it. You just obviously couldn't capitalize and had a very questionable fourth down play call attempt that obviously turned the ball over to LSU. They could field goal, put the game out of reach at that point in time. And Mike Shula didn't want to elaborate on that earlier on this week, which I did find a little bit funny. But what's done is done. What's in the past is in the past. One takeaway that was positive, though, is you did actually kind of run the ball pretty decently, and that wasn't just because of the Matthew Fuller run. You actually had decent carries out of him and Rasul Faison. Now, we could have seen maybe more out of Matthew Fuller last week because he only got 7 touches, including going about a quarter and a half after that touchdown without touching the ball. But that was promising to see your running game finally do something positive this year over the course of an entire game.
It was. I mean, that's the thing, too. It's crazy, Tyler. If I would have been summoned up, in your car when you're driving home from work on that Friday night and been like, hey, Tyler, South Carolina's going to run for almost 200 yards. Oof. Hey, Garrett Nussmeier throws 2 picks.
For one, I'd be like, how'd you get my car?
How'd you get my car?
2, I do like the stats you're telling me.
And then I'd be like, what do you think's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen? I'm telling you, Nussmeier throws 2 picks. Carolina runs for almost 200 yards. What do you think's going to happen?
I would say they should have won that game. Unfortunately, they did not.
And that's another reason why that game is such a kick below the belt to that team, to the fans, because you did something in that game that you weren't expected to do. I was chalking that game up as you're not going to run the ball, right? I went ahead and conceded you're not going to be able to run the ball.
Yep.
Can Lenora Sellers, beat LSU through the air enough to be able to win this game? And the fact that they ran for as many yards as a team that they did, that Rasul Faison was able to pick up some chunk yardage plays on the ground, that Matthew Fuller was able to hit an explosive, and you still weren't able to take advantage of it, only compounds the frustration of what that game was in Baton Rouge last Saturday.
But don't just take our word for it. Take the word of our guy, Ryan Brewer, as Terry sits down with him as he does each and every week for the Rewind and gives his thoughts on what happened last week and the look ahead. That is right now here on Gamecocks Game Day.
Let's get some brew. Time to hear from former Gamecock Ryan Brewer on Gamecocks Game Day from Jay's Corner. Sponsored by LexMed Ortho on your flagship home of the Gamecocks. 107.5 The Game.
Gamecocks Game Day. Again, Tyler, Elijah at Jay's Corner right across from Williams-Brice getting you ready for South Carolina, Oklahoma. Kickoff, 12:45. We roll up until 9:30. Then the network takes over. Time to get a little bit of brew, early morning brew on Gamecocks Game Day with Ryan Brewer. Okay, Ryan, first let's look back at LSU. 5 times in LSU territory, and out of those 5 trips, only 3 points. Watching that game, how many times did you want to punch the TV?
So that'd be 4. 4 times. We got points only once out of that, Terry. So, and even that was, I just did a headbutt instead of a punch. So, no, yeah, it's tough. It's tough when we go backwards with penalties, and just sacks and just missed assignments, things like that. Then an offense that is humming, that's got on 2 teams that neither one can run the ball, all season so far. And both teams start running the football, and we got a big play, which was awesome. But then we get some, Faison gets some nice runs in there, and even with Norris is scrambling and making some nice plays, and then we just shoot ourselves in the foot, the ankle, the knee, the head. It's just everything when we get down to scoring opportunities, and it just can't happen. And the crazy part about all of that is we're still with 5 minutes left in the game. It's a 1-score game, and we're in this football game, and that's because of what the defense did with the turnovers. But it's just we can't expect that, especially on 2-3 goal line turnovers. But it's just something that's frustrating. I think, and then it's been maybe somewhat answered, or at least there was, something chopping block wise, and see if Sean Elliott can go in there and maybe light a fire under these guys just to mentally prepare a little bit better and get ready and not have these mistakes.
Ryan Brewer getting a little bit of brew on Gamecocks game day, of course. Kickoff 12:45, South Carolina, Oklahoma at Williams-Brice. You can hear it right here on 107.5 The Game, and also our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. All right, real quick on Sean Elliott. You've been around Sean Elliott a bit, obviously. Give us your thoughts on Elliott. Everybody knows the intensity, the headbutting dudes with helmets on at Georgia State. Everybody's seen it. But kind of give us a little bit more of a more in-depth view of your thoughts on Sean Elliott.
I think the biggest thing is that's what you see. It is what you get majority of the time. But what it is the respect because of a man that just a guy you can look in the eyes and he means business. You know that he's going to tell you the right thing to do. And you got to trust it. And if you don't do the right thing, you don't do what he says to do, there's going to be consequences. And you have to have that respect with a coach. And I think that's the biggest deal with these guys, especially with now, Terry, we talked about, on and off air with the NIL going on, and, these guys getting paid and stuff, but you got to still have that balance of, hey, I'm still your boss. And no matter what you do, you got to listen to me, and you got to, when things go wrong, you got to come see me afterwards. And I think he's a guy that you don't want to see afterwards when you do something wrong. And that's a big deal. And I said, what motivates you? That's what motivates you as a player? What motivates you as a person? And sometimes guys' motivation is the fear of failure. And the fear of failure has to come to what are the consequences? I don't care if I fail if there's no consequences. So, but there's a consequence to it. And I know I got to face up to a coach that means business all the time. That could mean something. But not just because besides all that, X and O's, he's tremendous. He sees the whole game, everything what's going to happen from what he's been doing from head coach to every position he's been at. So excited to see if he can make such a big difference in such a short time.
Knocking off some early morning brew, Gamecocks game day. We are hanging at Jay's Corner right across from Williams-Brice with Tyler and Elijah today. Up until 9:30, then the network takes over with Chris Miller and the crew. Then Todd and Tommy on the call, 12:45. South Carolina, Oklahoma on 107.5 The Game in Columbia, and our affiliate in Myrtle Beach. All right, Ryan, if South Carolina is going to have more points on the scoreboard when this thing is over than Oklahoma, how's it happen?
Well, I hope the Mateer that played against Texas is the same guy that shows up against us.
Right.
Not that I don't want to see the best of everybody and beat the best, but if that happens, I think our defense can have an opportunity, like same as last week, get some turnovers and make some big plays, maybe get some sacks and stuff. Because he definitely was rusty. If he shows up like he did beginning of the season, what everybody thinks he can be, it's a little bit more difficult. But again, it's the same thing. 3 phases, have to play sharp, have to have the biggest thing we've talked about all season long is tackling, penalties, and turnovers. If we win the turnover battle and we tackle well and we don't have stupid penalties like we've had all daggone season. We can't have 13, 14, whatever penalties. We can't have 6 on offense when it comes full start, especially when we're driving and just killing drives. So just playing smart, fundamental football. Like I said, it's the craziest thing is two of these losses so far, we were in the football game. Missouri and LSU, I still think we're in the game, even though we played very poor. When I say poor, I'm not on all 3 phases. And we've had 1 phase pick us up, or 2 phases doing well and one failing, but you can't do that in the SEC, especially against these big dogs. And I think we got to come out on all three phases and just start battling. I think being home 12:45, hopefully the crowd gets into it and helps us out a bunch, and puts up some pressure on a quarterback that may struggle a little bit.
Ryan Brewer is always sponsored by your good buddy, Ryan Brewer Fence. Talk a little about Ryan Brewer Fence, Ryan Brewer.
Yes, it's a fence company I've been doing here for 20 years throughout the great state of South Carolina. Can do from residential, commercial work, anything you think of, ornamental fence, privacy fence, all your commercial stuff, temporary fence as well. We've done condos, hotels, railings on balconies for all of those. Everything you see, majority of the stuff you see around Williams-Brice, we've done. It's something I've have a passion in with a great team here, and go to ryanbrewer.net, see all our work, check us out on social media and stuff like that. And if you need anything, a pool fence or anything, get a new puppy, whatever, we can secure your yard, secure your house, secure your business. And secure is beautiful, and we appreciate everything the Gamecock Nation does to help us out.
Ryan Brewer, appreciate you like we do every week, my man. Enjoy the game.
All right, Terry, go Gamecocks.
All right, we will get back. Gamecocks Game Day. Hand it back to Tyler and Elijah at Jay's Corner. They will now go behind enemy lines, tell you more about the Oklahoma Sooners. That's next on Gamecocks Game Day on 107.5 The Game.
Back in Gamecocks Game Day, Tyler Head, Elijah Campbell. We are live out at Jay's Corner at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff. It's not open yet, so you can't come hang out with us, but it will be open up in just a little bit. And you can come hang out before the game, after the game, and take in all the great food and stuff here at Jay's Corner as you enjoy. Beautiful Saturday. Sun is finally starting to peek over the fair right behind us and starting to warm up a little bit. It's going to be a beautiful day as we watch the Gamecocks take on the Sooners. It is time to dive behind enemy lines, and you just heard there head coach Brent Venables talking about John Mateer, and that's the biggest question today. What state is John Mateer going to be in? He's not been on the injury report. He has practiced more this week compared to what he did going into last week's game against Texas, but again, we all go off what we saw last time out, and it was the ugliest performance we've seen out of him last year. His hand's bleeding. He's throwing God knows where with the football, and if he can do that today, Carolina's got a really good chance, but if he kind of returns to form from earlier on in the season, it might be trouble for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, to give you a picture, to paint this picture of how bad John Mateer was against Texas. Coming into that game, he had 4 turnover-worthy plays, according to Pro Football Focus. After that game, he had 8 on the season, meaning he had 4, as many in that game as he has had all season long. It was not a banner day for John Mateer when it comes to being able to complete passes, make the right decision, completing passes to his team. And I think there's one sequence in that game, Tyler, that sums it up. It's the very end of the first half. Oklahoma leads 6-3. Now, Texas is going to get the second half kickoff, right? Yep. So this is a big possession for Oklahoma to have to make Texas play from behind to start an entire half, knowing that there's going to be a possession change. So there's less than about 30 seconds left. They only have 1 timeout left. They're not quite in field goal range. They're maybe about 10 yards from field goal range, and it's about a 2nd and 10. Well, they throw an 8-yard pass, and instead of getting up to the line and maybe trying to run a really quick play to get that first down, and then you can use your timeout to set up the field goal, he walks up to the line and looks over at the line, looks over the sideline. And by the time he finally looks back at the line of scrimmage, there's 10 seconds left. And then Venables has to call a timeout. So you've already exhibited poor clock management. Well, now they're going to try to throw a play either into the end zone or near the sideline so they can get out of bounds and then try to set up a field goal. He takes the snap, and instead of looking at the check down, which is really where you want to be able to move the sticks and at least set up a makeable field goal, he chucks that ball to the end zone. And Malik Muhammad for Texas intercepted that ball with enough time. Again, he could have fair caught that ball if he really wanted to, because he completely misreads the route that his own receiver is running. His receiver breaks right, he throws left, and Muhammad's sitting there wide open in the end zone, able to pick that ball off. Oklahoma leaves with no points, and then Texas is able to get the ball, start the second half, only down 3. It was not a banner day for John Mateer's decision-making. And I know if you're an optimistic Oklahoma fan, you're saying, well, it's his first game, 17 days after a thumb surgery that saw him have 3 screws implemented into his right thumb, which is the thumb on the hand that he throws the ball with.
Yep.
Well, fine. You can say that if the throws weren't having a lot of zip on it, but the 3 screws in his thumb have no impact on his brain, right? That has no effect on your decision-making. And his decision-making on Saturday against Texas really displayed the duality of what John Mateer is.
Well, he doesn't have a lot of help around him on offense either, and that also reared its ugly head last week. And there was a lot of hype in the offseason about them getting Jaden Ott out of the transfer portal out of Cal, had a 1,300-yard season a couple years ago, had some solid games last year with the Calgorithm out there on the West Coast in the ACC. But he's come in and done all of nothing. Torrey Blaylock, their main running back, had 100 yards against Temple, but hasn't really done anything against the other quality opponents that they played. So John Mateer really kind of is their run game and put up a few yards last week. But a guy with a hand injury, you don't want him to take a whole lot of hits. So I don't think that's a team that's going to be able to effectively run the ball. So it seems like what Mateer does through the air is once again going to be the whole offense for them today.
Yeah, it kind of like LSU, right? LSU could not run the ball this year. That's been their biggest weakness, and one thing that's handcuffed their offense. And Oklahoma's lack of running game has absolutely handcuffed them to John Mateer. Mateer has to be the run game. He has to make plays whenever they're on quarterback option plays where you can either hand the ball for RPOs, rather, hand the ball off, keep it, or throw it. The whole handing it off option hasn't really done them much good this year, and they love to run RPOs. So it's one of those things where Oklahoma becomes a lot more one-dimensional, and Mateer can maybe scramble, pick up yards. He's a decent, design runner, but that's not what he does best. And really the lack of development from Jaden Ott, which has been a real point of contention for Oklahoma's offense this year. Brent Venables has spoken publicly a few times about how it's a little disappointing that they're so behind schedule with him. And for a player that's that experience, your schedule should be right now, right? Being on schedule should be being good right now once you got to campus, and that's just never really materialized for them.
On the other side of things, it would be easier to tell you the statistical categories they're not in the top 10 nationally in than the ones that they are, because this Oklahoma defense, as you would expect, Brent Venables is one of the best defensive minds in this era of college football, is absolutely nasty. South Carolina struggles to score points anyway offensively. You're really going to struggle today against this defense. You're going to need your defense and special teams to help you out and hopefully give you some short fields there, because they are nasty at just about every single level of defense, with the exception of tackling, because weirdly enough, in the 3 games they played against Power 4 opponents, they've had double-digit missed tackles, so that's something that South Carolina can't take advantage of. Pass rush is good, coverage is good, all that kind of stuff. Look, even Beamer said on Tuesday, look, we're going to have some negative plays. They're going to get in our backfield. They're going to have sacks. They're going to have tackles for losses. Just expect that. Like, that tells you how good this defense is.
What's so crazy about Oklahoma's defense is what Brent Venables' defense kind of reminds me of Steve Spagnuolo defenses, right? Longtime defensive coordinator for the New York Giants, now the defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's won many Super Bowls, right, because of his defense.
And will probably win more. And one of the reasons why they're so similar is because you don't ever really know where the pressure's coming from at any given time. They disguise blitzes really well. He's not afraid to blitz a safety. He's not afraid to blitz the nickel. He's not afraid to send 8 on any given play. He is so good at making it unpredictable as to what's going to happen. It helps that they have 4 guys on the defensive line that have 10-plus pressures on the quarterback this year. But they can also get him through other positions, right? That's what makes them so nasty. You normally would have to worry about a guy like R. Mason Thomas, who is one of the elite pass rushers in college football. But there's 3 other guys on the defensive line with 10-plus pressures, along with R. Mason Thomas. Oh, yeah, and you have to worry about where everybody else is coming from, because if Oklahoma just wanted to rush 4 every play of the game, they could, and they'll still create negative plays and make life hard on your quarterback. But the fact that they send it from all directions, and the fact that you, on any given play, don't know who is coming to the pass rush and is trying to collapse the pocket, makes it so much harder for an opposing offensive coordinator and quarterback to be able to game plan for, because you can have your best guess. Your best guess probably isn't adequate. And just like last week with the Blake Baker defense at LSU, extremely blitz happy. And to look at the numbers, with the exception of the Kent State game, which, quite frankly, they could have beaten Kent State with one arm tied behind their back. They're
7 defenders.
They're blitzing quarterbacks at over a 50% clip. Like, he is going to send pressure constantly, like you alluded to a moment ago. And here's the thing: Brent Venables calls the defense himself. He has to answer no one. If he wants to blitz on every single play, he can blitz on every single play, and he's got the dudes on that side of the ball that are capable of doing that.
The funny thing is, too, is like when Brent Venables smells blood in the water, he's not afraid to attack. Go back to the Michigan game early this year. It was week 2 of the season, national television game. Michigan's coming to town with a true freshman quarterback in Bryce Underwood and an offensive line that was solid, but it's not what Michigan usually is. What did Brent Venables do in that game? They blitzed Bryce Underwood 65% of the time. 65% of the time did they bring extra help on blitzes. And guess what? Bryce Underwood was in hell all afternoon. He could not be, there was not a single time where Michigan was able to get a play developed. They had to try to short game him to death. Michigan wasn't equipped to do that. And Oklahoma won that game without their offense having to do much, just being able to do enough. And I think when Brent Venables knows he's got a mismatch somewhere, he's going to exploit it. So I fully anticipate no fewer than 55% of Oklahoma's defensive snaps today being blitzed.
Funny thing, though, this is a defense that isn't really good at taking the ball away. They have 2 takeaways so far the entire year, 1 fumble and 1 interception, both of those coming against Kent State. So you feel like South Carolina should be able to hold on to the ball, which they've done a better job of this year compared to last year. But with everything this defense that Oklahoma has is good at, taking the ball away is actually not one of them, which is kind of odd to me.
Yeah, that tells you how good the defense is and how much better it can be, right? Because Clayton White says it all the time, and I think it's a very true adage that turnovers on defense come in bunches. When your defense is so good to where you can hold teams to the yardage Oklahoma holds their opponents to without forcing turnovers, whenever you do start forcing turnovers, you're going to score off them. And that offense that has been struggling to get things going for Oklahoma will eventually find its breath a little bit once they're able to get some shorter fields and not have to continuously march down the field to get their points. That defense is so good right now. It's a matter of when, not if Oklahoma is able to create turnovers. And once they do, this defense that is already elite gets even better.
We'll take a look at South Carolina's offense, defense, and special teams coming up next as Gamecocks Game Day continues to roll on. We're live at Jay's Corner Restaurant and Bar at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff, getting you set for the Gamecocks and the Sooners kicking off today at 12:45. It's Gamecocks Game Day here on the Game. All right, welcome back in Gamecocks Game Day. Tyler Head, Elijah Campbell. We are live here at Jay's Corner at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff as traffic's starting to pick up a little bit as the crowd is rolling in. I think the fair opens up in about an hour and a half, so you'll have people coming in for that as well. Going to be a very busy day here at the fairgrounds for the State Fair in Carolina taking on Oklahoma. It is time to look at the Gamecocks offense, defense, and special teams. And, of course, we start with the offensive line. Now, I've been here for 3 years. The entire time that I've been here, especially since Sean Elliott came in at the beginning of 2024, people have been clamoring for Lonnie Teasley to be moved on from, Sean Elliott to take over as the offensive line coach. You got your wish. I don't know how much can really change in 1 week, though. If nothing else, if you can cut down on the pre-snap penalties, we'll consider that a win today.
I have been hammering that point home all week, Tyler Head, because there's only so much you can do in terms of developing in a week, right?
Right.
The show Extreme Makeover offensive line edition does not exist.
Yeah, I like the move that cockaboose thing.
Move that cockaboose. Yeah, here's the thing. The thing that you can improve on is the thing that you can control before the snap.
Yes.
In so much of your struggles against LSU came because you were constantly behind the sticks because of those procedural penalties. I don't expect, Boaz Stanley to start looking like Jeff Saturday. I don't expect Josiah Thompson to turn into Orlando Pace. Don't expect that. We're not going to have 1 week and all of a sudden you're moving humanity at the line of scrimmage and you're keeping any human being from touching Lenore Sellers.
Right.
Not a realistic expectation. But what can be a realistic expectation is that Sean Elliott took such a boot to their rear ends in practices in terms of, hey, these are the procedural penalties we're having. Not anymore. Not again. And if he's able to kind of beat that out of them, and they don't have any of those procedural penalties, that at least helps you get more of a chance, really, in this game to give yourself a puncher's chance to take advantage of the gifts that Oklahoma will inevitably give you offensively.
I'm hoping, if nothing else, the fear of God that Sean Elliott puts in them, knowing if they come off the field after having a pre-snap penalty, he will bite their head off on the sideline.
He puts it in me. I'm not even playing for him.
Maybe that'll change something. We'll see.
I was going to say he puts the fear of God in me just watching him sometimes, but that's where it begins and ends. Like, you can't do the advanced stuff of anything in life if you can't master the fundamentals. And the fundamentals of offensive line play, step one, snap the ball. And if we're having troubles before we can complete step one, I can't realistically expect you to do steps 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth, right? You got to be able to at least get the playoff.
I didn't think I could see one center have so many illegal snap penalties in 1 year. The Boaz Stanley that's unfortunately become a signature. And then you transition to Rodney Newsom, and he couldn't even get the snap off last week. He didn't know the snap count on play number 1, and it got overlooked. But he also had a wild snap on the second drive as well that Norris Sellers thankfully wrangled in. But he did not get off to a good start last week. He went back to Boaz, had the same issues. I'm assuming Boaz is starting today. I don't know. I don't know if there's another. We've talked about Marquis Anderson, the fact that he's healthier this week. Maybe is an option at center, which I said this earlier as well. If Sean Elliott goes out there and radically changes the lineup on the offensive line, even if it doesn't work, I think most of us can accept that as, okay, at least you're trying something, throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, because what you've done so far this year just hasn't worked.
Because I'm usually one of those people, Tyler, that I'm not a fan of making decisions just for the sake of making decisions, right? I feel like when you make a decision, especially when it comes to personnel or staff changes, there has to be a really good reason for doing so, and not like it's something within, like as if something within the process is broken. And I think now we've seen plenty of examples as to something in the process is broken. The offensive line hasn't really developed because it's not like you're not recruiting well, right?
Right.
Josiah Thompson was one of the top players in the country at all positions coming out of high school. Had a good year last year, hasn't gotten much better this year. He has not had the season that would tell you that he has developed, right? The guys that you bring in on the offensive line they had plenty of suitors in the transfer portal, but you've gotten them here, and I don't know if they're much better than they were at their previous stops. You're seeing so many examples of maybe highly touted offensive line recruits, but you're not getting it out of them on the field. And really, when there's that much of a disconnect between who you're recruiting and what their production is, ultimately the split has to happen, because you've got to be able to take the raw talent you get in the building and build upon that. And they just haven't done it so far.
On the flip side, the defense, obviously, as we talked about, got to affect John Mateer, and hopefully he's still not 100% like he was last week against Texas. Make him beat you with his arm, because, again, he had some pretty poor decisions being made last week against that Longhorn defense and stop the run as well. Now, again, we went into last week's game knowing LSU was not able to run the ball effectively, and they did that against South Carolina. So you really hope this is not the breakout game for Oklahoma's backfield today.
No, you can't. If Oklahoma if they run today for what LSU ran for, you're in for a long day.
Yeah.
You're in for a really long day. And that's the thing. Like LSU at times, I think you could almost concede the run sometimes because they were so willing to abandon it so frequently. Oklahoma, if they get any type of like semblance of being able to run the ball, they're going to stick with it because they know that's going to make life so much easier on a scrambling quarterback like John Mateer, right? Sometimes the running game and its success doesn't have the same correlation with a quarterback like Nussmeier. But if the running backs for Oklahoma are able to get out in space and make plays and you're not able to wrap up and you have tackling performances like you did against Vanderbilt in Missouri, then that really makes life so much easier for John Mateer. And then maybe you don't have those gifts that we're kind of anticipating him giving the Gamecock defense.
But with the offense struggling as much as it has, this is always going to be a key for me. Defense and special teams either have to get you actual physical scores, pick sixes, scooping scores, punt return, something like that, or just drastically flip the field position to where you cut what the offense has to do, like in half, like getting turnovers in plus territory, returning punts and kickoffs into plus territory. Because again, the offense is not showing you the ability to put together long drives throughout the course of the entire game. So if you can help them out by cutting the field in half, that would be huge today.
Winning the field position battle is going to be big. This is one of those games where Beamer Ball might have to win it for you.
Maybe.
Right? Because we saw with South Carolina against LSU, when they were able to move the ball, it was usually moving the ball when they were on their own side of the field. Once they got past the 50 is where the progress stopped. That's where the penalties happen. That's where the intentional groundings and the miscues kind of start happening. That can't happen here, right? You've got to be able to take advantage of those red zone trips, and the way you can probably get more of them is if you get a big return in the punt game from Bakari Swain, or if you're able to pin Oklahoma deep in their own territory and force them to punt, and that punt only gets out to the 50. Like, you've got to be able to make it to where you don't have to sustain long drives because we haven't seen this team do it enough this year.
I'd just like to see them actually get into the red zone today because they did not do that a single time last week. Matthew Fuller ran from 72 yards out. They did not run a single play inside of not just the 20, inside of LSU's 25 last week. You did not get inside the final quarter of the field over 4 quarters last week.
And the chance they had, Tyler, was in that second half. I believe it was in the fourth quarter where they get to LSU's 26. False start moves it back 5 yards. And intentional grounding moves it back even further. So instead of having 1st and 10 on LSU's 26, it was second in an ungodly distance from LSU's 46, 47-yard line. You took yourself even out of field goal range before you were even able to have a play that counted.
Yep.
Right? Like that's one of those things too. If you get to Oklahoma's 26, you can't go backwards. And there was just so many times where it felt like South Carolina had a big red line spray painted at the LSU 25 that said, do not cross, and they were law-abiding citizens on Saturday.
Well, hopefully they're better in that area coming up today. We'll get the lowdown with our guy Preston Thorne coming up next. As Gamecocks Game Day rolls on, we are live from Jay's Corner Restaurant and Bar at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff. Again, Gamecocks and Sooners coming up today at 12:45. Tyler and Elijah Campbell along with you on Gamecocks Game Day here on the game. All right, welcome back in Gamecocks Game Day. Tyler had Elijah Campbell along with you here on what is turning out to be a gorgeous, gorgeous morning as we're live at Jay's Corner Restaurant and Bar at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff. The traffic is starting to back up. I've been looking at these same cars sitting in that place for several minutes now. So if you're coming, there's been several honks. If you are coming to the game, get here as soon as possible because you have not only the game traffic, but fair traffic as well because fair opens up at about 10 o'clock this morning. So you want to get ahead of all that rush and make sure you get here in time for the 12:45 kick with South Carolina and Oklahoma. It is time to look at the SEC and top 25 scoreboard. It was a bad night to be a ranked team on a Friday night as both Miami and Nebraska go down. We'll start off with Miami losing to a 4-1 at the time Louisville team. I think we all saw this coming, right? Yeah. Mario Cristobal can't go without one of those. Stinkers. Of course he lost that game. And last night, Carson Beck reverted back to Georgia's version of Carson Beck, threw 4, should have been 5 picks as Miami comes up short to the Louisville Cardinal 24-21.
Oh, man, you can infuse all the talent in the world on a Mario Cristobal coach team, but you can't take Mario Cristobal out of the Mario Cristobal coach team. He finds a way to do this every year. He finds a way to do it. The guy is an ace recruiter. He has built so much excitement at Miami, and there's all their goals are still ahead of them. I'm not going to bury Miami. I'm not going to say they're frauds because I still think that's an incredible football team, and Ruben Bain is one of the best players in college football, and they have some receivers that help Carson Beck out a lot. But you know what? They were due. They were due for Mario Cristobal to come in there and lose a game where she's a 13.5-point favorite at home and completely fall apart. Carson Beck had an atrocious game. I don't care about the 274 yards. I don't. I care about the 4 interceptions because that's what cost them that game. And ultimately, they're now having to fight for a spot in that ACC title game because that race is getting a lot closer, especially with what happens at Georgia Tech and Duke today.
I thought the Big 12 was going to be the most fun and chaotic conference to watch. I think the ACC is taking the cake. You're right. Georgia Tech and Duke, both undefeated in the conference, will play today, so one of those teams will suffer 1 loss, but you still have 2 other teams in Virginia and SMU that are still undefeated in conference play as of right now. So realistically, Miami could miss out on the ACC championship game entirely. We'll see where they sit in the rankings when they come out here in a couple weeks and how they view this loss to Louisville. But yes, they don't control their own destiny in terms of making the conference championship anymore. Now Louisville obviously holds the tiebreaker over them.
And that's going to be really big, which now Louisville has a chance to really control their destiny going throughout this too. Between Virginia, Louisville, Georgia Tech, Duke, those teams are all controlling their destiny in that league right now. And it's going to be an interesting race because they don't all play each other because, again, ACC, way too bloated. You're making this really hard in terms of getting teams into a conference championship game and considering how many at-large bids the ACC will normally get in a 12-team playoff. Last year, they were very lucky to get 1. Then you are really hurting some of the better teams in your league by having very odd tiebreakers and having the situation they got right now where Miami can conceivably only lose this game in conference play and be sitting at home in the first weekend in December.
Elsewhere last night, number 25 Nebraska went on the road to Minnesota, and the Minnesota defense did their best impression of South Carolina last year versus Oklahoma. 9 sacks of Dylan Raiola. I don't know, maybe Matt Rule was thinking too much about that Penn State job this week as Nebraska will not be ranked when the AP poll comes out next week.
Row the boat. We talk about a lot of coaches on this program and our programs during the week, but nobody talks enough about how good of a coach PJ Fleck is. They showed their schedule on Fox last night whenever the game was pretty much no longer in doubt, and you're looking at that schedule and it's like there's a really good chance that Minnesota goes 9-3, and if they pull off an upset, if they were to have upset Oregon, don't think they're going to do, but if they pull off an upset, 10-2 is on the table.
Absolutely.
What PJ Fleck's done at Minnesota is make them a habitually an 8-win team. Hard to do in today's Big Ten. Hard to do in today's college football with that program. But what PJ Fleck has done at Minnesota has gone under the radar. He's one of the more underrated coaches in college football. And last night he proved it. Had a ranked team come into your building, and you completely eliminated their offense from contention in that game. And they had about a 98-yard drive in the third quarter that took up a majority of the quarter, which is the most quintessential PJ Fleck drive you could possibly imagine.
Elsewhere, let's look at the SEC slate for today. Things kicking off bright and early with the 12 o'clock kick on ABC between LSU and Vanderbilt, a top 20 matchup. I know it's still crazy to say that about Vanderbilt. They are still favored at home by 2.5. They have, I believe, never been favored against LSU, or at least it's been a very, very long time since that happened. And if you believe in the transitive property, Carolina's played both these teams. Vanderbilt looked a whole lot better against Carolina than LSU did last week, and I'm riding with the Commodores today.
I thought about it. I wanted to pull the trigger on Vanderbilt. I couldn't do it because I think ultimately program prevails. But and also for LSU's broken offense, I think the one thing they did learn against South Carolina was that they do indeed have a 6'7", 240-pound tight end they could throw the ball to.
6'7"?
I still don't get it. I got to do the thing. I got to learn that bit. I have to learn that bit. But Trades Green, going in that South Carolina game, Tyler, had 6 targets on the season.
Yep.
They targeted him 11 times against South Carolina alone. It's like, oh, yeah, we got this athletic freak of nature here on this team. Let's just throw him the football and have him post up in the end zone and see what happens. I think they lean into that matchup a little more, too. They kind of discovered what their passing game is, and Garrett Nussmeier is going to throw a pick or two, and I still think LSU finds a way to win that game by 1 or 2.
Biggest game of the week today, this week in the SEC is number 5 Ole Miss traveling to number 9 Georgia. Ole Miss beat the Dogs last year out in Oxford. They're looking to do the same thing coming up today. Georgia, my biggest key to this game is Georgia cannot get off to a slow start. They keep finding themselves in double-digit holes. Did that last week against Auburn. I don't think you're capable of coming back from a double-digit deficit against this high-flying Ole Miss offense led by what could end up being the Heisman Trophy winner, Trinidad Chandler. He's playing phenomenal football. Georgia is really good at home, though. For whatever reason, Kirby Smart always finds his team geared up and ready to play these games. I think it's going to be a good, fun matchup, and it could really go either way.
It really could. I had a hard time picking this one, too. I mean, the one thing I felt confident in was that Ole Miss covers 7.5. But Trinidad Chambliss is like the best story in college football right now, being a D2 transfer, being thrusted into action when Austin Simmons gets hurt and not surrendering that job. If I'm with you, if they get off to a hot start, Ole Miss will take care of business. My thing is, I have yet to see Lane Kiffin do it on the road in this type of spot. I'm going to have to believe it when I see it. I still think Georgia wins, but I think it's going to be an incredibly close game, and I think Georgia does just enough offensively. And I think Gunnar Stockton does just enough offensively. Again, I put him in that Haynes King category of I don't know if he's a good quarterback, but he's a dog.
He's a dog.
He's a dog.
He will lay it all out there to try and help his team win, that's for sure. It's also the 3rd Saturday in October, which means Tennessee and Alabama squaring off tonight at 7:30 on ABC. I still feel weird for this game being a night because this was always like quintessential 3:30 CBS.
Every
year.
So
it's weird seeing this be a night game, but I expect points galore in this one. I think both offenses are going to score a lot of points. Tennessee's defense has shown the ability to stop basically no one this year. Alabama's defense is decent enough, so I still think this is going to be a fun, high-scoring shootout tonight.
I think points will be scored. I just think Alabama scores a lot more of them. I still think Alabama probably wins this game by 2 touchdowns just because Tennessee's secondary is so banged up. You're still not going to get Jermon McCoy. He was ruled out. Colton Hood's had a really good year in terms of being opportunistic and making turnovers happen, but Ty Simpson's been so good at protecting the ball and not putting it in harm's way. I don't think you get some of the silly turnovers that Tennessee has been able to force against teams like Syracuse and Mississippi State or even Georgia as a matter for that matter. But I think I don't think they turn the ball over. They're going to throw the ball all over Tennessee. Tennessee can score 28, 35 points in this game and still lose by multiple scores. And that's kind of how I see this going down.
Number 4, Texas A&M has to avoid a tricky road game, taking on an Arkansas team now led by Bob Petrino, in case you forgot about Sam Pittman being fired, one that's capable of pulling an upset. I keep picking them as my upset each and every week because I know what they're capable of. Taylor Green, a very good quarterback, and if A&M is not on their best, they can get tripped up today.
Taylor Green, quarterback at Arkansas, on pace to throw for 3,000 yards and rush for 1,000. That does not happen in college football a lot.
No.
That is not something that just frequently happens, and he is that level of excitement, electric quarterback. I think this is the game for A&M to me, Tyler, that will dispel previous notions of Texas A&M because it seemingly, I've been saying it, Texas A&M doesn't find 8-4. 8-4 finds them, right? 8-4 is Michael Myers. Texas A&M is Jamie Lee Curtis. They can never avoid it, right? But this is the year that I think this is finally the year that Texas A&M is at their most complete, and they're finally for real, and they'll break the 8-4 cycle. This is the game that historically, this late in the season, that has tripped them up. If they avoid this trip up, then I think we can confidently say Texas A&M is a legit contender, not just for the SEC, but maybe a national title.
So Arkansas was the first team to fire their head coach in the SEC this year. Realistic possibility 2 more teams could have head coaching vacancies by the end of the weekend. We know for sure it could happen at Florida as they play host to Mississippi State coming up today. Funny enough, they are almost 10-point favorites in this one. weird considering how well Mississippi State's played this year. And then Auburn playing host to Missouri as they are trying to avoid an 0-4 start in ACC play, and now year number 3 under Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, I think Billy Napier might be fired regardless of outcome, but I think that team knows Billy Napier's done.
Yeah.
I don't know how much dog they have in. That's such a hard environment to play in when the future of the program kind of hangs in the balance. I think Mississippi State pulls off that upset. That's the upset I'm really feeling this week in the SEC is Mississippi State beating Florida.
It feels like it shouldn't be an upset, though.
Exactly.
I feel like Mississippi State's the better team.
Because Mississippi State has played really well this year. And Jeff Lebby's done an incredible job coaching them. He really is the right guy for that job. And when it comes to Auburn and Missouri, I'm not a believer in Hugh Freeze. Believe it when I see it. Give me Missouri all day.
Yeah, you just wonder if Missouri is going to be in kind of a letdown spot after a tightly contested game last week against Alabama. But Auburn kind of finds a way to beat themselves at the same time, too. And, again, the Hugh Freeze experiment just doesn't seem to be working out there. And it's really funny because, again, Arkansas has already fired their coach. I do think both Auburn and Florida are going to be coming open soon. And it seems like Kentucky's trending towards firing Mark Stoops. We could really have 25% of this conference looking for new head coaches in the offseason.
This has the potential. And then because the James Franklin firing obviously being the national headline.
Sure.
That this is the craziest coaching carousel that we'll ever see. Schools are now willing to spend more money on buyouts. They're willing to take more drastic measures because of how important the money-making business of football is to their athletic departments. I would not be surprised at all if Mark Stoops is gone, if Hugh Freeze is gone, and if Billy Napier is gone by the end of the month, maybe.
Elsewhere outside of the SEC, a couple of ranked-on-ranked matchups. You got USC or Southern Cal and Notre Dame squaring off tonight in South Bend. I do like Southern Cal in that game, despite the fact they're 10.5-point dogs. And then the Holy War tonight between Utah and BYU might be the funnest, most physical matchup the entire weekend, as the fate of probably who's going to play Texas Tech in the Big 12 championship game on the line in that one.
It certainly does. A great rivalry, historic rivalry, very localized rivalry. Teams that play that have similar MOs, right? They have similar MOs in how they want to play physical. BYU's got a quarterback named Bear Bachmeyer, which is really cool. And
Phenomenal
they also
name.
wears the number 47. So
I don't like that.
There's a lot of weirdness that could happen in this game. But BYU-Utah, in terms of non-SEC games, is the one that I really want to catch tonight.
Going to be a fun weekend of games, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty more upsets because that's how this season has gone so far. We'll come back. We'll give our final thoughts. Also talk to Jack Belcher of Gamecock Central to get you set for the Gamecocks and the Sooners. Coming up today at 12:45 as Gamecocks Game Day rolls on, live from Jay's Corner and Bar, here at the corner of Rosewood and Bluff on your Saturday here on the game. All right, welcome back in Gamecocks Game Day. A few more minutes here from Jay's Corner Restaurant and Bar before we send you the SEC report, which will take you into network coverage. Getting you set for South Carolina and Oklahoma coming up today at 12:45. Time to bring in our guy, Jack Beltry from Gamecock Central, joining us on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Jack, happy early morning to you as we finally get a early kick in the bright sunshine. How are we doing today, man?
I am doing good, fellas. I actually didn't get a ton of sleep. Watched some football last night. I did not stay up for the entire Cal game, which I saw ended at 2 in the morning. How about North Carolina, man? I mean, just talk about an absolute disaster over there. What a bad way to lose. Hopefully South Carolina can find a better way to win today. But, yeah, guys, I'm doing well. I'm on the road right now.
Well, hopefully you can get in here soon. The traffic is starting to back up with the fair and everything, so hopefully you're not too far away.
Oh, man, I am going around, man. Like I said, you got to take North Beltline, hit Shop Road after that, and hopefully it'll be a lot smoother going that way than going down Assembly or Olympia.
Well, don't give away all your secrets because then everybody use that route and it'll turn into another area of traffic. You got to be careful with that kind of stuff, man.
Keep those close to the vest, Jack.
That's right. That's right. Don't play your card. Don't put all your cards on the table. Man, as we look at this game, and you and I have talked about it all week long, a pivotal point for Carolina where you're sitting at 3-3. Obviously got even tougher opponents coming up in the next couple of weeks with ranked teams, and all of them with the exception of Alabama being undefeated up to this point. You got to have this one today, man. And whether it's ugly or pretty, you got to find some kind of way to come out on top and get yourself 4-3 and have some positive momentum going into this rest of the tough slate on the back half of your schedule.
Oh, you have to win this game today. I wrote about it in my staff picks. I mean, look, if you want to go bowling, you have to win this game. Like, tell me, like, that with a straight face that South Carolina is going to find a way to beat Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas A&M. It could happen, but those are all top 10 teams in the country, and 2 of those games are on the road. So I just think South Carolina, this is probably your most winnable game. Oklahoma is vulnerable right now, coming off an ugly loss in Dallas against Texas last week, where they kind of got exposed a little bit. Mateer didn't play well. Texas defense really got to him, hand injury or not. He just did not play well in that game. They didn't run the football well at all. So that's kind of what you need to replicate this weekend. And look, this is going to be Oklahoma's first true road test. They went to play at Lincoln Financial against Temple. That I don't really count that. And then also the neutral site game last week. This will be a different animal tonight.
Jack, we know this offensive line has struggled. That's obviously why they fired Lonnie Teasley as the offensive line coach. You don't do that when things are going swimmingly. But this Oklahoma defense swarming to the football, maybe when we're aggressive that you're going to see, they're going to be really blitz happy. If you're Mike Shula, what is the elixir to playing with an underperforming offensive line against a defense that is that aggressive?
I think it starts with limiting the penalties, right? I mean, you only hurt yourself more and kill drives when you have these false starts and these illegal snaps and all these silly little penalties that you can control. That I think it starts there. But if you're Mike Shula and you're drawing things up today, and obviously the offensive line is going to be a bit of a focal point today with people watching this game, I think you got to come out here and run the football. I mean, for all the criticism that the offensive line gets, there's no denying that you can't run the ball without some blockage up front. The offensive line has done enough, despite not being good, these past 2 games to block enough for this running attack to nearly go for 200 yards in each of the last 2 games. So that's kind of where it needs to start today for sure.
For as good as Oklahoma is at just about every statistical category on defense, you always have belief in the South Carolina offense when 16's back there controlling things. And look, we've seen him do well in the past game against a team like Missouri, run the ball really well against Kentucky, a couple weeks ago. We haven't seen him put together that full performance on both facets for an entire 4 quarters yet this year. If he can do that today, Carolina's got a really good chance to win this. You just wonder if that can happen or not.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, what do we classify as a good performance from him? Well, I think you want to see him kind of do what he did against Kentucky 2 weeks ago. I think is a good starting point. But you want to see more of him throwing the football. I think you're going to have to throw the football a little bit to win this game because, look, Carolina's ran the ball great the last 2 weeks. But at the same time, Oklahoma's defense is really, really good. So I think, yeah, you need to run the ball well in this game, but I think you also need to see Norris throw it well. And it also comes down to, look, the blocking hasn't been great, but his decision-making has to be better. I mean, the 2 intentional groundings you have to avoid this week if you're him, and you also need to be more on target with some of your throws, because I think they were kind of late, low, behind some guys like Mazio Bennett and Nick Harbor last week in that game against LSU. So, he's as much at fault for this offense not producing the way we thought it would as anyone else. I mean, look, he is the quarterback, and he's the one with the ball in his hands. He's been good, but he's got to be great today.
Now, defensively, South Carolina, we know is going to have an advantage on the line of scrimmage. Oklahoma's pretty banged up with their offensive line, and you feel confident about them being able to maybe bend but don't break against them. But how much of Carolina's success today is going to be contingent on the defense forcing turnovers?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, I think I saw the stat the other day. Oklahoma hasn't forced a turnover in 5 of its first 6 games. That's huge. I mean, if you're South Carolina, this is a turnover-happy South Carolina defense that likes to get takeaways and win the turnover battle. That's something you have to do today against this offense that, number one, Mateer is coming off a game where he turned the ball over 3 times. 2 of the interceptions were on him. 1 was a tipped ball that went off a receiver's hands. But those are the types of mistakes you need to see today if you're that Gamecock defense, because let's face it, we don't know if this offense can score you enough points. Can this defense and maybe even the special teams do their part in helping you win this game?
All right, Jack, this game kicks off early, so hopefully we're wrapped by about 4 o'clock. When that time comes, what's that final score going to be?
I'm going with South Carolina. South Carolina, 17-14 today. I don't trust this offense, but I do trust this defense and special teams to go out there and make enough plays, and I think it's going to happen today. I think it's going to be rocking over at Willie B, and yeah, man, they'll get the win today to stay alive in the bowl hunt.
Elijah, how about you?
I got Oklahoma winning 27-13. I'm on a believe it until I see it basis with this Gamecock offensive line. I have a hard time picturing them getting into the end zone with regularity today. I think Oklahoma does just enough offensively, and they probably force some turnovers of their own. Clayton White says when they happen, they come in bunches. I think today might be that starting point for Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that one. I got Oklahoma winning this one 17-13. I think it's going to be a slog. I don't think this is going to be a game people not on either fan base are going to want to tune in for, because I think it's going to be ugly on both sides, kind of like last week's game was against Oklahoma, or against LSU. But I just haven't seen enough from this South Carolina offense to believe they're going to be able to do enough against a phenomenal defense like Oklahoma's. Again, I look at the matchup between Brent Venables calling a defense and Mike Shula calling an offense, and I can't side with that Shula offense, unfortunately. Defense is going to have to step up. Special teams is going to have to step up. Carolina's going to win this game. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to. And, guys, that's going to make for another fun Reaction Monday if that ends up being the case today, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've been wrong before.
I hope we're wrong.
Don't not take my word as gospel. But
Jack, I hope your prediction's the one that comes true out of the 3 of ours.
One of us has to be right.
Oh, man. I hope so, guys. I really do. I think everyone needs it around here.
Well, buckle up, and, hey, no matter what happens, you can go hang out at the State Fair again and enjoy some delicious fair food to drown your sorrows and celebrate the victory at the end of the day.
Oh, man. I appreciate you guys. I'll see you at the stadium.
Yeah, man, sounds good. Jack Veltri there of Gamecock Central, and we're about to hand things off to the SEC report, and fingers crossed that we have a fun game to talk about come Monday. We'll see.
That's right. Hey, it will not lack drama. That is for sure.
That's right. Again, Gamecocks and Sooners coming up today at 12:45. We're done here at Jay's Corner Restaurant and Bar. We'll go head over to the stadium and see what unfolds, and about to hand things off to the SEC report, and then its network coverage getting you set for the 12:45 kick. So for Elijah Campbell, I'm Tyler Head, Captain Dave back in the studio. This has been Gamecocks Game Day. Again, 12:45 kickoff between the Gamecocks and the Sooners coming up today here on the game.